Good morning, sunshine. Thanks for joining us on YouTube. I'm your host, Brandon Lee, alongside my good friend and host, Carey Pena.
We have two guests in studio, incredible conversations coming up. First of all, my friend Kayyem is here. He's a high performance coach and he runs these intensives in Arizona, but also spreads out around the country. And really what he does is he helps people kind of break down physically in order to have deeper conversations and see deeper meaning in their life. So we're gonna be talking to Luke about that. Also, one of my favorite topics when talking about sort of training your mind is organizing your life, and Cathy Perez is an expert in this. She's going to talk to us about the Konmari method and how we can get better organized to have more mental clarity in our life.
So you know what? I always go back to Oprah. When in doubt, go to Oprah. Oprah one time gave this advice on her show. She goes, if you do one thing every day, make your bed.
Yes.
She goes, as long as you make your bed every morning, you will get a sense of accomplishment and you've done something already to start off your day.
Yes.
And I will say this, there are days where I don't make my bed and already I feel messy.
Well, there's that best-selling book by that military expert, right, Luke? It's Make Your Bed.
Make your bed.
That's what he says.
They tell you to make your bed.
In the morning.
It all goes down with organization. All right, let's talk about what's going down in behavioral health right now. And this is really fascinating. It's a trend, and it's a positive trend that's happening along police departments around the country. Pairing police with mental health professionals. 9 out of 10 calls to 911 typically are mental health related. So a lot of times I've spoken over at the West Valley CIT training. It's the crisis intervention training, where they learn more about behavioral health, how to handle behavioral health calls. So it's not only always officers arriving to the scenes now, it's also they're being paired up with mental health professionals to really de-escalate and understand what kind of a police response needs to happen to many of those 911 calls.
And I think it's so important too to acknowledge that the first responders are in need of that type of support. I know as a news reporter, we've both been out on calls, drownings, and horrific situations,
Correct.
and I often thought, geez, these men and women go home and have to internalize that. And so I'm glad to see that this kind of specific effort is being made.
That's right, because the mental health professionals will be also out there to help those officers who are responding to a lot of those crisis calls.
Yes, so positive movement
Yeah.
forward. And now it's time for our story behind the story. In studio with us today, Kayyem, who is a high performance intensive coach. And Luke, it's so great to have
Good
you
to
here
see you, my man.
at
Good
the
to
Center
see
for
you.
Positive Media. We love having you in studio. I wanted to invite Luke into the studio to talk about these intensives that you're running and what you intend to do here. You're trauma focused, and what you do is you kind of break people down physically in order to allow them to open up emotionally. And I know I've interviewed you before, and you've suffered quite a few traumas in your life, and that's how it informs your work.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me. Most men, myself included, have not unpacked their childhood pain that they dealt with, whether it was from the way that they were raised or something that they faced or something that happened to them that they had no choice about. And so now us men are adults and we have our own kids. And so really Fathers of the Future became to be because I was an adult who had not unpacked anything that I had been dealing with most of my life. And I've been on the show before to talk about losing my mom and the way and the fashion that affected me. Well, it took me down a negative slope, and because of that, most of the choices, most of my habits, most of my disciplines were very weak. And so I had to learn how to let go of a lot of what I was carrying. And through that practice, through that work, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, I've been able to create a program called The Crucible. And so it's an intensive men's training. It's 24 hours in time. It really takes somebody down to their weakest point. And we challenge them physically. We beat them up physically just a little bit for them to be able to even tap into their emotional side, which has been dormant or dark since whatever they faced. And not everybody has to be broken to have a breakthrough, but it is the majority of men that I work with. If we go deeper and deeper and deeper, there's something that happened to them.
We carry that trauma throughout life and we make poor life choices. I do it via shamanism, so I do deep breath work, gets me past the frontal lobe to heal that inner child. How does this work?
So we do everything from, I'm a civilian, and so I tell that to everybody. I've done a lot of work with our military community, getting them prepared and prepped to go to battle, to even join, and be a little further ahead than most. But the physical part of how we break them down is intentional. It's so that they can realize that their body either is or is not a machine. And so we start there at that place. For most men, their bodies will give up. They haven't been training to the top of their capability. Once we begin that process, we get into some ice, some cold, and meanwhile, these men are blindfolded intentionally so that they're not in charge. Your eyes tell certain stories that your ears and your body cannot tell. And so we immediately close their eyes off so that they have to be forced to become more in tune with other senses that they're not used to using. From that process, there's a lot of metaphors, including climbing a mountain. And so they climb a mountain carrying a rock, and that rock represents the weight that they've carried most of their life. And so we build up and we break down, and we build up and we break down. We do some deep breath work. We do some circle of life breathing. We do some Wim Hof. We visit some breath shamans that are local. There's lots of different service providers from my experience being in the high-performance CrossFit coaching world that I bring in to teach some of this stuff, as well as MMA and combat, being prepared, being able to handle the situation that most people wouldn't know how to get a hold of in order to not be the villain or the victim. And so we teach these men how to become heroes in their own life story through this challenging day. And when I say challenging day, the greatest way to explain it is it's like Scrooge and the Ghost of Christmas Past, Present, and Future. We're showing them this circle of life and in real time while they're in it, so that when they go back home just 24 hours later, they're different. They've transformed, they've done something, they've accomplished something that's not only hard and challenging and painful, but meaningful.
What has it been like to watch people have these type of breakthroughs and to unpack this trauma? Much of it people have held on to since very young in life. So what has that been like for you?
So my other title is corporate leadership coach, keynote coach, but it does not give me even close to the same ROI on my time and my energy, even to the point where coaches of mine have said, are you sure you want to be staying up all night long, out at the lake, putting people in the ocean, doing this type of work when you could be focused on this other area of your business? And I come back and say yes every time.
I'm trying to understand. You're trying to break them down to make them more vulnerable and share their feelings and not be so walled up and closed off?
So that's not my intention.
Okay.
The intention is to give men an experience of transformation by doing these obstacles and these challenges. What happens from that is very hard to pinpoint and explain and describe. Most men, when they get in that place, are automatically feeling safe and free to be able to share. And so when we ask, we do a build-up. There's a week of education of getting to know who these men are that are coming. What is the problem? What is the pit? Where have you faced your greatest challenge? What is the trauma that you're holding on to? And like I said, some guys will come in with a corporate background who have a pretty fierce wall up. But once we break that wall down from the physical domain and we begin to tap into the emotional and the mental, then there is a space where things just naturally happen. And so I don't want to advertise or market that we do a specific thing. We challenge men to rise. And from that, they become greater fathers, greater leaders, greater teachers, greater humans. They stop carrying the weight that they've been carrying the majority of their life.
But in the way that you train, it is actively asking people to be more vulnerable.
Absolutely.
However they translate that after is sort of up to them. And you had to do that in your own life. After your trauma, you and I have talked many times about this. I mean, you kind of had to get right with yourself. And part of that was mental toughness, and part of it was vulnerability for you.
Yeah, I'm cautious with the word mental toughness for people who are dealing with mental health. Because I've been told I can be a little too intense at times in some of my trainings and practices.
I've trained with you and I can vouch for that. So, yeah.
That's how I heal. I heal by expressing myself as naturally as I can. And at times there are things that are very unorganic and unnatural in the intensity of how we get people to move. When you take someone from a push-up position to an ice bath to face with a coach or a trainer, to ask them the question of who they are and why they're here, and not, I'm in Scottsdale at the park and it's 5 in the morning, but why are we truly here? What is your purpose? I can't guarantee that they leave that experience knowing their purpose, but I can guarantee they've looked at it much differently than they ever have before. And as you know, a purpose-driven life is a meaningful one, and it gives us more reason to get up in the morning and keep striving.
You're speaking our language, Luke. Where can people find out more?
So LukeKayyem.com is the website. The Fathers of the Future is a podcast that I have where I interview men on their experience and what they've gone through in life and how they've overcome things. And you can find me on all social channels as well.
Now we want to share a story that we produced, and we talk a lot on this show about having hope, and Luke just talked a little bit about mental strength, and we interviewed a family who has a little girl with a rare genetic disorder, really tough situation, but they talked to us about how they find strength and that they are never, ever going to give up on finding answers for their little girl.
FD is small, and we are rare. Hi, I'm Stephanie,
And I'm Brian.
and we're the parents of Zoe and Piper.
It took almost 2.5 years to get Piper diagnosed. We had 4 or 5 hospital admissions, quite a few
ICU.
ER trips, every specialist in the world that we could see. And then we got the diagnosis when Piper was 2.5.
Familial dysautonomia affects your autonomic nervous system. Basically anything that you would do automatically, produce tears, regulate your blood pressure, your heart rate, all these kinds of things she has to think about and do consciously as opposed to her body automatically doing them. So
Balance, breathing,
affects-
circulation, muscular.
it affects everything. She drinks through a G-tube because her coordination for swallowing is not as good as it should be. And so, she aspirates silently. It's a condition that affects every moment of every day. We give her water through her tube. We give her medicines through her tube. We do a percussion vest, which is similar to what someone with cystic fibrosis would use. Shakes up her lungs, gets everything cleared out. She has 2 inhalers that we use. She then proceeds onto a cough assist machine, which goes over her nose and mouth and helps her produce a productive cough. She sees 11 specialists regularly. Each one of those specialists needs a checkup anywhere between 3 months and 1 year. She gets blood draws every 3 months. She takes medication 3 times a day.
Physical therapy,
Physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. We do it all. The foundation gave me that unity and community and support. The foundation moves mountains. Like they produce results. Our hope is for a cure.
A long, happy, healthy, wonderful, tenacious life.
It's little girls like that who really inspire all of us as an adults. The strength that this 7-year-old, this young girl has really does inspire at least me and of course her parents also, being a parents of a child going through this and, parents trying to find purpose in their life after something that is difficult.
And I spent a bit of time with Mom, and it was interesting because she definitely has chosen, she does not want to have a victim mentality.
Right.
And she certainly, has a lot to be sad about and worried about, but she has chosen not to live like that.
Right.
So she's extremely positive, and I just enjoyed so much spending time with
a great
that family.
story.
And now we want to go to our Mind, Body, Spirit segment, and we want to welcome Cathy Perez into the studio with us. Cathy, you are an expert in the Konmari method, and so this is Marie Kondo's method, and I've watched a bunch of her episodes on YouTube, and you help people, specifically women, reduce stress and anxiety through organization.
Yep.
Talk to us about that.
Absolutely. First, thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. But yes, so I am the 159th worldwide certified Konmari organizer consultant, but I'm also a health coach. And so I also encompass all these different modalities naturally so that I can help women understand and create a better relationship with their anxiety and stress. Too many people think that anxiety is like a stepchild or that it's going to go away. No, it's a part of our fight or flight system, and so it keeps us alive. Some of us just have too much of it, or rather we don't know how to deal with it. And so through organizing one way, through the Konmari method, That's part of my coaching methodology. I help women understand through 3 different components. The second component is the Konmari method, and they're blown away that organizing, even if it's not the Konmari method, just organizing can help elevate your thinking. Simply because when you only focus on when everything around you is elevated, meaning like it's supporting you, specifically in the Konmari method, let's say, then you understand that you have nothing to be scared of. And so there's gratitude growing inside of you, and that means that you're going to have more clarity because there's less guilt. There's less feeling of scarcity. You have abundance, and that's important when you're dealing with anxiety.
So is it safe to say that it's almost a mirrored reflection? If you walk into somebody's house, listen, I grew up with 2 older sisters and a mother, and our house was a mess. And girls, I'm sorry, girls have the messiest bathrooms I've ever known. A majority of them, I have to say, a majority of them. But is this a thing where life almost mirrors itself? Like if you walk into someone's home and it's a complete disarray and it's a mess everywhere, it's usually a mirrored reflection of that person's soul in life.
Absolutely, it completely is. And what I love about the Konmari method is that Marie Kondo, took it from organizing being a mundane task, which people don't feel is very serious, and she elevated it to a spiritual awakening. Like literally, it's like cognitive behavior therapy. And it's because you realize everything in the Japanese culture has a soul. Everything around you has purpose, and you give it gratitude because you're using it. And if you don't use it anymore, you give it grace, you give it gratitude, and you let it go.
Let it go.
It's a
guilt.
life of simplicity.
Can you
Absolutely.
explain more for folks who are watching who aren't familiar with her work? I mean, what is this method?
So the main staple is actually the joy check. And that's why it's so different from anything else. So the joy check, it's a gratitude practice. And in our Western culture, unfortunately, we're not in tune with how gratitude is so powerful. But when you have gratitude floating through your body, fear, anxiety, they
Goes
can't
away.
live naturally.
So I'm just wondering, what are some tips and some pointers so for those women, you work with women, those women who are watching, can maybe learn something right now about even just beginning this kind of method?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So if you're not familiar with the method, there are 5 categories. So she's already simplified your life to 5 categories. And they are clothing, they are books, paper, and then there's miscellaneous or kimono, and then sentimental. And they go in that order for a reason because your clothing is on you, so you know if you like it. Then as you work through all of your clothing, then you start to hone that joy check. And then it becomes easier. And then it becomes easier each category. This is your life with paper in the Konmari method. 3 different categories: other, pending, and important. That's it. So how many people use paper as an excuse because their life is in disarray? Happens all the time. Something like this is my actual organizing jewelry that I have hanging in my closet, and it brings me joy because everything I want that's jewelry related or accessories is right here. I don't take 10 minutes to figure out what I want. So it's all about simplifying and realizing that everything has a purpose, but that I can be grateful every single moment. And when you have gratitude, your brain doesn't have anxiety, or it doesn't experience anxiety, and you can focus and you can be productive.
Cathy, can you talk to us, before we let you go, I want you to talk about your concern about how people are just crippled by anxiety. And Brandon and I report on this all the time on this show, especially coming out of COVID. What is that going to look like? There is such high anxiety in the country. It's very concerning.
It's very concerning. And, you know, it's interesting because, again, people don't see how their personal space matters. But if we learned anything from the pandemic, we had to learn that where I live is where I find peace, or where I find the most chaos. And so when you take organizing, and it can be, let's just take any method, but once you realize that organizing will bring you focus and more calm, then you realize my anxiety doesn't have a reason to jolt up. I have the ability to organize my life on a personal and a professional level, but that everything is supporting me. And when everything's supporting me, that translates into the Konmari method, which is later on used for decisions. You make decisions based on what brings you joy.
One quick follow-up. If people are going through some real tough stuff, I know I appreciate what you're saying, but someone might be listening thinking, listen, how do I see gratitude in this day? I'm going through XYZ, I'm walking through an addiction, or my child has, all of these issues at school, and you feel so overwhelmed. What is your advice to get to that gratitude state?
I would say what I do, believe it or not, it's as simple as breathing. I have, in my program that I have for women, there's a specific breathing section. And it's simple as telling yourself for 2 minutes, I'm going to sit here and I'm not going to let myself get overwhelmed. I'm going to breathe. And that sounds so simple, but it works because when I go from one task to another, I breathe. I have a certain breathing technique. And it's as simple as breathing because when you're feeling overwhelmed, your brain doesn't know what to do next. But when you tell when you're breathing, that's all you're doing, your brain's like, it resets itself.
Right.
Thank you so much for being here. Where can
Thank
people
you.
find out more about you?
Sure. The easiest way is I'm mostly on Facebook, so you can just find me on my handle, Cathy Perez.
We appreciate you. Thank you so much. Hang with us here as we close the show out. We're going to do our sunshine story now. We always like to end on a ray of light. We love this. This is a TikTok trend we were just chatting about, this adoptive trend, adoptive family.
Okay, so I love this. Our producer Christine finds these amazing stories online. She loves TikTok. See
She
you
does
back
love
there. She
TikTok.
loves her TikTok. And so what I really found fascinating, the way I was able to relate to this the most, is that all of us, when we are in life, we all need a mother. We all need a mother figure. We need a father figure. We need these roles. Our inner child needs all that stuff. Well, some of us don't have a mother in our lives. Some of us don't have a father. And I remember my trauma therapist one time saying, she goes, Brandon, let me play that role. As we need. Let me talk to your little ones, my inner child, and let me play the role of your mother, because that's what your inner child needs. And so it's really fascinating that, social media gets a bad rap. Okay, everybody blasts social media there. I think this is where social media can be good, because social media is actually helping a lot of people out there who are alone, isolated, in a desperate situation, and people are doing good in humanity by going on TikTok and essentially adopting people and filling a void in their heart.
Yeah, Christina was giving us one example of a young man who came out and came out to his family. They disowned him, at least for right now, and he went on TikTok to talk about it, and people just started loving on him and saying, well, then I'll be your mom, I'll be your brother, I'll be your sister. And that's the kind of thing that just makes you want to cry, right?
Yeah,
it's so
because
beautiful.
In that moment, how hard it is to be disowned, abandoned by your own parents. Like, that's heart-wrenching.
Horrible.
But that void can actually be filled
Yes.
with love, and that's all that is.
And we have to mention the grandma who's very popular on TikTok, because she says she'll adopt all the grandchildren who need some love.
I love
That's
it.
the kind of grandma I live for. Thank you all so very much for being with us for Good Morning Sunshine.
Yeah, thank you for watching us on YouTube. You know what to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. You're going to notice a little alarm bell symbol right there. Go ahead and click that. Every time we upload a new episode, you will get an alert notification.
And we appreciate all of you. Take care of yourselves and of one another. I'm Carey Pena alongside Brandon Lee. Thank you for being here, and take good care, everyone.